Buckle your seatbelt. It's time for another episode of the Prepper Recon Podcast. Whether your plan is to bug out or bug in, CampingSurvival.com has all of your preparedness needs, including fish antibiotics, long-term storage food, and water filters. Use coupon code PrepperRecon for 5% off your order at CampingSurvival.com.
Get prepared before disaster strikes. PrepperRecon.com offers MOLLE-compatible individual first aid kits for your home, auto, or bug-out bag. These kits have everything you need to address a traumatic injury, including an Israeli battle dressing, quick clot, EMT shears, suture kit, steri strips, tourniquet, tough strip bandages, and so much more. $99 includes shipping. Go to PrepperRecon.com and click the Store tab at the top of the home page. Order today before it's too late.
Today's guest is Vincent Von Doom of the Disaster Survival Network. Vince, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. I'm very excited to be on the show. I've been listening to some of your previous shows, and I really like it. It's one of my new favorite shows. I listen to every new show you come out with now. I was listening to Future Dan, and then I was listening to a lot of your economic reports about the Venezuelan collapse. And how many shows or videos do you have archived?
Wow, we've been doing the show for 3 years, and we put out 2 a week. So just over 3 years. We just had our third anniversary back in the middle of April. So should be right just over 300 episodes in the backlog if you go to the archives.
Wow. Yeah, it's definitely one of my new favorites.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and we sure appreciate that. Now, we met at the Atlanta Preparedness Expo, which was a great place to network, great place to meet other preppers, and to just kind of get out and get around other people that don't think you're crazy, right? And now you also went to the Texas show, I think. How was the turnout there?
It was good. Not as many people as I expected, but the crowd seemed more receptive. The people in Texas are very friendly. Texas is such a cool place. I wouldn't mind moving there. I mean, the gun laws are so relaxed, and I tried Uber for the first time. I was driving all around in these Uber cabs, and it was so cheap. We went out to dinner with a lot of people from other vendors, and we had a really good time. My wife came with me, and we had a really good time. Both expos went very well for the network and the magazine. You know, we got a lot of new subscriptions, and we made a lot of contacts. Like you said, it's very, very good for networking.
Yeah, and then talk to us a little bit about Disaster Survival Network. You've got a podcast, and then you also have a magazine, right?
Yeah, it's a nationwide network of like-minded Americans, preppers, survivalists, outdoorsmen, and I first started getting into it, let me see, after 9/11, after the 2012 stuff, all the hurricanes, and I told you before how I was from Long Island, and then I got married, and me and my wife, we finally realized that we're never going to make it living in Long Island. It was too expensive, and I wanted to live the prepper lifestyle, so we decided to move upstate. And she had a friend who was willing to put us up for a little while. And we lived up here for a few years, and then I started the Disaster Survival Network. And originally it was just a website, and then it grew into a magazine. We do a weekly radio show, and we're trying to launch an individual TV channel. Not just a YouTube channel, but an actual TV channel. You've seen the shows on Discovery and the History Channel. They've got a few prepping shows. Well, we think it's about time that we had our own channel, that there's enough interest in it now that we could have our own channel with all these different shows, have a medical show, have a home improvement show, survival shows, and we don't want to make anyone look like they're crazy. Like that was some of the complaints people were given about doomsday preppers, that they were making some of them look like kooks. But most of the people that I meet, they're not kooks at all. They're very smart, educated people. And all they want to do is just be a little extra prepared in case something happens. And it's always better to be prepared and not have to use it than, to be caught and not be prepared at all. So.
And then would you probably do that on something like Roku if you did a channel?
Oh, we're developing a Roku channel and all the other devices, but the end goal is to actually get it on cable or satellite. It's very expensive, and a lot of people they're ditching cable and satellite just for internet-based stuff. So we might bypass that altogether and just do streaming right from the web. A lot of these new TVs that you buy are smart TVs, and right out of the box, they ask you what web channels you want to set up. So it's Disaster Survival Network TV, .tv, and we're going to be streaming live 24 hours a day, different shows. And then we're also going to have another option where, like a Netflix style thing where you could subscribe and you can just log on anytime you want and watch whatever videos you want whenever. And instead of having, like, say, comedy or action, there'll be camping, hunting, prepping, homesteading as the categories.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, we completely ditched cable, and the only thing we have is just the Roku that, so that streams from our internet, and we don't have any additional services besides the internet. So, and then the Roku, that's a one-time fee, and we love it. And I think you're right, and I think that that's going to be the way of the future, and I think that traditional publishers, they're really taking it in the nose. Traditional taxis, you just talked about Uber. That's another disruptive service that taxis, that's changing. So many bookstores have had to close their doors. A lot of them are kind of hanging on for dear life. But they're just not, they haven't been good at being agile and staying with the market. And I think that Comcast is they've got so many properties that I'm sure that they'll survive in some form. But they have just horrific customer service, which is one of the reasons we don't have cable, is just because when we switched over from Comcast to AT&T, because of the horrific customer service, we just decided to opt out of that. And AT&T is a little more expensive and a little slower, but when something breaks, I can call them and they've got somebody here in 2 hours. Whereas with Comcast, you might be on the phone for 2 hours before you ever reach a human being. And they might just hang up on you because their system just automatically hangs up on you in the middle of your hold time. So you could be on hold for 2 hours, and then the system could hang up on you, and you have to call them back for another 2 hours. Whereas AT&T, the guy's here in 2 hours fixing the problem. So it's night and day for customer service. And it's a lot of big companies. They just get too big and they're not agile, and I think that's going to be the way of the future. And radio, that's why podcasts have been able to thrive. Is they don't have the hard costs of radio. You could start a podcast for nothing. If you want to make it a little bit higher quality, as you go and as you're doing it, then, you can invest a little more and get a little bit better equipment. That's certainly what we did. If you go back to my first show, it doesn't sound like what we put out now. But still, it's something that's relatively cheap to do. And a radio show is something that's very, very expensive. And you can reach so many more people because you're not confined to a small geographical area with a podcast.
Yeah, you got to adapt. In survival in nature, you have to adapt, or evolution. You have to adapt, and a lot of these companies, they don't want to adapt, so they get left in the dust.
Now, speaking of Texas, I read that 31 countries were just declared to be in a state of disaster from the horrific floods they're having out there. We don't really need an EMP for survival to be relevant these days, do we?
No. There's so many disasters every single day, week. It's always in the news. More and more people are getting into preparedness and survival every single day. If you look on the Google search analytics for survival and prepping, it's just been a constant graph. It's just been going up and up the past 10 years. So a lot of people, they're taking it a lot more serious these days. Yeah, I saw that about Texas. They having some pretty bad floods. I'm going to try to get in contact with some of the people. I'd like to have them on my show this week.
Yeah, and then there's I guess there's some of the basic lessons that you could learn from what they're going through right now is probably number one, situational awareness. Being tuned into the weather's something that you almost always have to pay attention to because things like that, you have some idea when huge storms are coming in or when these types of problems are going to occur most of the time, especially with hurricanes and things like that. We were talking right before the show about Hurricane Sandy. Frontline just did a piece on New York and the people that still 3 years later have not been able to rebuild because they're getting hustled by the insurance companies and they're not paying out, which the flood insurance is federal government, but the federal government's flood fund got so depleted after Katrina that now they're just really, really tightening the screws and not paying out to people what they've promised, and the fund is in a severe deficit, and it's another thing that's having to ask for taxpayer bailouts. And it's another example of why government doesn't belong in hardly anything, especially things like insurance and education and healthcare and all of these things that's just our founders never had in mind for them to be involved in any of these things, and they've just so pushed themselves into our lives and taken over in so many areas that they're just not set up to be able to handle. So it's another classic example of that.
Yeah, plus there's no common sense anymore in government.
Absolutely.
They just muck everything up, all these meaningless laws, and it's just getting ridiculous. In some places, you can't even get flood coverage. I know there's places in Florida, insurance companies won't even give you flood coverage. Even where I live, if you live in a low area where you're prone to flooding, they won't even let you get flood insurance.
Right, and I think that it's the government that's came in and wrote those policies because the companies have said that's not really a great place to build a house because it's just too low. And so, rather than letting the free market say, okay, well, if that's an uninsurable area, then people have to assume their own risk. So then, therefore, less people build in a floodplain, then the government's come in and said, okay, well, we'll pick up the check if something happens. And so the same thing that they did with the FDIC. Once you take all the risk out of it and you say, well, the taxpayers will just pay for everything if the banking system blows up again, then the banks don't have to be responsible about how they invest people's money, and people don't really think about what the bank does because they know that the government's gonna bail it all out. Of course, just like we've seen with the flood fund, if we ever have another Great Depression type event, the money's not going to be there, and they're not going to be able to pay people out. They're going to do them just like they did in Hurricane Sandy, and they made a promise that they're not able to keep because it was something that the free market could have easily handled and said, okay, well, we're not going to write these policies, so people just won't build there, so then you won't have the problem. But like you said, they get in and they get involved and stick their nose where it doesn't belong, and it messes a lot of things up. Now, besides floods, Chicago had 69 people shot and 6 people dead over Memorial Day weekend. It sounds like the numbers from a terrorist attack, but those numbers are just typical for the Windy City for Memorial Day weekend. I guess that's another example of why survival is relevant, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, it's like a war zone over there now. It's like an urban warfare, urban jungle, and this is what the main gist of the conversation I wanted to have today was. I want to bring my network and the magazine into a new, modern type of survival, modern American family survival. It's no longer about being in a desert or in a jungle and trying to get out alive. Most of us are living in the urban jungle. Life is completely crazy. When you leave your house each day, there's no guarantee that you're even going to come home alive. So I want to start changing all of it up and start teaching people more about how life is, every day is about survival. And there's all different aspects to it. There's surviving cancer, surviving drug and alcohol addiction. Like I said in an email to you before about how parents can't even send their kids to a party anymore. They worry about their kids coming home alive. Gunfire break out at 16-year-old's party. This happens every week all across America. All these shootings, and they call it Chicago. And it's just getting crazy. Everyone's on drugs. Everyone's stressed out. No one has money. People stealing from each other. It's getting really dangerous. So everyday life now is just as dangerous as it would be going into like the South American jungle. And we need to start fine-tuning our survival skills so that it's more suited towards like urban survival, and economics is a big part of it. Everyone needs money, but half the people I know are out of work. So it's like, what other options do you have? Start a home business. What can you do to reduce your bills? So I'm going to be making a lot of changes to the network, and I want to concentrate more on just those things, the modern American family survival. People sell these like fire starting kits and all that. Most people, they have a Bic lighter. Okay. Just don't get it wet. There's practical stuff that I want to teach people. And I'm going to spend the next couple of weeks and months really digging into that and trying to get as many experts on as I can.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. The dollar's lost over 90% of its purchasing power since 1971. Silver, on the other hand, has proven to be a very stable form of wealth preservation over the years. And where do you buy silver? Silver.com, of course. Silver.com offers fantastic prices on gold and silver. Check out silver.com today. Ready Made Resources is a trusted name in the prepper community because they've been around for 18 years. They offer great prices on night vision, water filtration, long-term storage food, solar energy components, and provide free technical service. Get ready for an uncertain future at ReadyMadeResources.com. We just passed the 3rd anniversary of the Prepper Recon podcast, and it couldn't have happened without you. To say thanks, I want to send you a free PDF copy of the 7-Step Survival Plan. It's a basic blueprint that will help you to prioritize your efforts and make sure you're not missing any important areas of prepping. To get your free copy, simply go to PrepperRecon.com and click the 7-Step Survival Plan free PDF banner that's directly under the menu bar at the top of the homepage. Thanks again for 3 great years of the Prepper Recon podcast. And one of our regular listeners, his name is Bill, and he sent me an email yesterday, and his pension is being cut by 33%. Obviously, the pensioners are the ones that are going to be hardest hit by this move. But if we see this type of thing becoming widespread, as I suspect it will be, this is going to have ripple effects throughout the entire economy. How do people prepare for stuff like that?
Well, I don't know how we haven't collapsed already. I mean, how much money do we owe? How many trillions of dollars do we owe?
19 trillion and counting.
So
and that's what's on the books, and that's not counting the unfunded liabilities, which top 200 trillion.
Wow. So is that because we're so much in debt that everyone else will collapse? I know that the BRICS countries, Russia, China, they're trying to start their own currency alternative. to the dollar. And I know for years that the United States has been involved in economic warfare, and other countries are getting hip to it. I mean, how do you think we really built the biggest military in the world? It was off the backs of other countries, other third world countries, from currency manipulation. Now they're getting hip to it, and there's going to be some pretty tough times ahead for us. We might see a second Great Depression, or we might see a total collapse. We really might see it. I mean, I don't know anyone who even owns any stocks. I don't know how the stock market. I mean, someone hacked the Federal Reserve a few days ago and found out that most of the stocks owned in the United States are being held by the Federal Reserve. So they're propping up the stock market. They're printing money, while Russia and China keep stockpiling gold, and everything they want to trade now they want gold as payment. They don't want American dollars anymore. There's a reason for that they don't want American dollars anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you look at things like that, I think that you just mentioned that Firestarter is not the most relevant thing that you can do from a modern survival perspective. But maybe a more practical step is to really strip down your spending and get it down to where you can really survive on 50% of your income. The Chinese do this, and they make a heck of a lot less than the average American, and they still sock away a huge portion of their income, despite the fact that their average earnings are way, way below the American poverty line. So maybe that's something that folks need to think about. And then when the hit comes, if you take a 30% cut and you're already living on 50%, you've still got a little bit more wiggle room. Or if you get a 50% cut in your pension, you're still at your budget. And then whatever you're not spending, you're building a cushion with that money, so that you're able to deal with disasters when they come. If you were in New York when Hurricane Sandy came through, and you had a financial cushion, you were able to just gas up your car, throw your most valuable belongings in your car, or if you lived in the city and you didn't have a car, you could rent a car, and take a road trip and just get out of the way and not have to worry about at least your life and, your pictures. And that's another thing with being prepared, is having all of your important documents on a flash drive, having all of your, you can get a 64 gigabyte flash drive for like $20 now. So you can have all your wedding pictures on there. You can have all your pictures from high school and your anniversaries and your honeymoon and all of that stuff, baby's first steps, all of that stuff. You can have all that stuff on that flash drive. You can have all of your insurance information, all your login IDs, and everything that's important documentation wise on that flash drive, so that if you have to leave your house, you can grab that flash drive and walk out, and you've still got a huge portion of your life that wouldn't be lost otherwise. And just having that financial cushion, if you've got 6 months worth of expenses in cash, or however, then if you lose your job, you've got some room that you don't have to panic. You've got some room to sit back and think about how are you going to deal with it, and how are you going to cut costs, and what are you going to do for another job, and things like that. So I think that financial preparedness is very, very relevant for today, and I think that's super easy to do. And if you live in a war zone, another thing you can do, usually if you're in a war zone, you're right in the center of some urban population. So one of the things you can do there is you can move out to the suburbs. A lot of times you're going to have a longer commute, so you're going to have to spend a little more time in the car perhaps to drive to work. But you're probably going to have cheaper rent, a little more land, so you can have a little garden, and a lot more peace of mind when you are at home. So there's a lot of practical things that people can do to be more resilient and better prepared for these types of issues.
Sure. I mean, those are the things that we teach. But the problem is, most people, they don't have that cushion. It's not realistic for them. They're living day to day. They're living paycheck to paycheck. Half the country is out of work. The other half who is working, they're living paycheck to paycheck. They're making minimum wage or bringing home $250 a week. By the time you're done with your rent, your gas, your food, you've got nothing left. I mean, forget about buying new clothes or new shoes or putting any money away. So there's a lot of people who are really, really feeling the pressure, and that stress eats away at them daily. It's a lot of people are walking around with post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of soldiers, but people, you don't even have to be a soldier. People are just walking around stressed out. They don't have any money, and it's dangerous. It's contributing to a lot of violence, broken families, divorces, domestic violence. And these are some of the things that I want to start getting more into, because a lot of these other survival websites or magazines, they don't really talk about it that much. They talk about natural disasters and this and that, which is, I do that too, but I really want to start focusing on the average person, what they go through, their struggle on a daily basis, and how we can help alleviate those things.
Well, very good. And now some folks are just now waking up to the need to prepare, and I think it's important for those folks to try to get up to speed on prepping. But for people that have been at it for a while, they can get what you've termed as doom fatigue. Can you describe that for us, and then just tell us briefly the best way to deal with it?
Okay, well, doom fatigue is, all right, you turn on the news, all you hear is depressing stuff, all right? Your life already sucks because you either don't have a job or you're working at a job that you hate, you're in debt, kids screaming or whatever, your car just broke down, so you're already stressed to the max. And then you're being bombarded with all this bad news, all this doom and gloom. And with me, since I work in the industry, I'm always hearing about disasters and bad stuff. So I call it doom fatigue. And it affects me. It affects my daily life. It affects my relationships with my family, because I'll start getting mad or depressed. And I have to learn every once in a while to step, even though I'm immersed in it every single day, I have to learn just to step away from it and do things that I enjoy. This last weekend, Memorial Day weekend, I had a lot of work to do. I could have stayed in all day in my office and done work. But I said, I got to get out with my family. We planted a garden. I bought a tiller. We planted the garden. It was nice staying outside. We filled up our hot tub. You just got to remember to do stuff that you enjoy and stuff that makes you happy. It is very stressful these days. We're always bombarded by some type of crazy stuff.
That's fantastic advice. And the stuff that relieves stress doesn't necessarily have to be expensive, and it can be, like you said, getting out working in the garden, something that costs very little, that's going to have a positive return, and is going to make you a more resilient life, or just getting out and going for a walk. That's going to get your heart rate up a little bit and help you be in a little bit better physical condition, which is always a problem anytime we have hurricanes or snowstorms, people that are clearing debris from hurricanes, or people that are shoveling snow. They always have heart attacks because they're in bad shape, because they don't get out and just walk, which would really, really go a long way in just helping out their cardiovascular health. So Vince, tell us where we can go to hear your show.
You can go to disastersurvivalnetwork.com. You can go to disastersurvivalnetwork.tv. I have all my stuff on there. just click on the radio button. Once a week, but I'm going to be having other guests start joining my network, different shows. We're expanding the network constantly. That comes out on a Friday night, once a week. My Facebook page, my Twitter, I usually put alerts out anytime I do something new.
Fantastic. And what about the magazine? How often does that come out, and how can we get it?
Okay, the magazine is bi-monthly. Digitally, it's bi-monthly, but the printed version comes out quarterly. We were talking before about how a lot of these old media companies, they're going out of business. They can't keep up with the times. Now, it's very expensive to print magazines, and I'm not rich by any means. It was a real struggle to get this magazine printed, but in fact, our industry, they actually demanded a printed version. While other magazines, print magazines, are in decline, some of the biggest names, Newsweek, Playboy, they're all in decline. Survival, preparedness, gun magazines, they're still selling a lot of copies. And whenever you go to a newsstand, you'll see them. It's all survival, gun magazines. I think our industry, they want to have the paper magazine for their library. If the lights go out, the grid goes down, or what if they're out hunting or camping? That you don't want your tablet with you. You drop it in the mud or something like that. So, fortunately for me, there's still a lot of interest in the printed versions of survival magazines. So, the copy that I gave you at the expo, that was our first ever printed edition.
Oh, fantastic.
And the magazine you can get on the website. Just go to the website, disastersurvivalnetwork.com, or you can go to disastersurvivalmagazine.com. But disastersurvivalnetwork.com is the main website for everything. So if you go there, you can get the radio show, you can get the magazine, everything.
Well, thanks for everything that you're doing to help wake folks up and being part of the solution. And thanks for making time for us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. People are definitely more receptive and into it, and it's not as crazy anymore. It's like you don't have to be a closet prepper anymore. It's cool now. It's like mainstream because people realize the need for it.
Thanks again, Vince.
In 7 Cows, Ugly and Gaunt, Book 1, Behold Darkness and Sorrow, Daniel Walker begins having prophetic dreams about the judgment coming upon America for rejecting God's word. Through one of his dreams, Daniel learns of an imminent threat of an electromagnetic pulse attack, sending the country into a technological dark age. If they want to live, Daniel and his friends must focus on faith, wits, and preparation to be ready before the lights go out. Buy your copy of 7 Cows, Ugly and Gaunt, Book 1, Behold Darkness and Sorrow, by best-selling author Mark Goodwin, in paperback, Kindle, or audio edition from Amazon.com today.